Pop quiz. It's November. You got 4 games left. You're 2-6. You're facing down a matchup with one of the top teams in the country. What do you do? What do you do? We're going to talk about what Pitt needs to do over these next 4 games, what they can accomplish in the month of November, what they should attempt to accomplish in the month of November, right here on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, no silly shenanigans, no costumes, nothing like that. Halloween's over. October's over. It's November, and this is the Morning Pitt here on a Wednesday on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We got a lot to talk about today of what these next 4 games, what opportunity is going to be presented here, and we'll get into that for sure. Of course, you know the deal. This right here is our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. This is the place to find all of our Pitt video content, whether it's video highlights, interviews, press conferences, these daily morning Pitt videos that we put out every Monday through Friday, the live Panther-Lair show that we do every Wednesday night, but we're not doing it tonight because Pitt plays UPJ in an exhibition game. Excuse me. So we did the live show last night. Me and Jim Hammett got together and had a little fun on the live Panther-Lair show on a Tuesday night. Usually we do it on a Wednesday night, though, and then, of course, we have our live post-game show on Saturday after the game. 3 more Saturday games left. And of course, the Thursday night game against Boston College. And we'll go live after the Boston College game. Believe me. Even though it's going to be like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, we'll be live right here to talk about it on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I kind of wish that was a road game so that we could start it, a little bit earlier, started by 11 o'clock or something like that. But it's a home game, so we're going to cover the game, cover the post game, cover the press conferences and everything, and then head back to the Panther-Lair studios and jump on the live stream, the post-game live show. So you don't want to miss any of that stuff. Like and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and that way you won't miss any of our Pitt video content. You can also turn on notifications, and that way you'll get an alert sent to your phone every time we go live here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You know the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. All right, so there's 4 games left. Okay, we're not going to sit here and pretend like there's anything more than a single-digit percentage chance of Pitt winning out and earning a spot in a bowl game. We're going to operate under the heavy assumption of Pitt falling short of 6 wins and finishing their season at the end of the next 4 games. To wit, Florida State at home, Syracuse in the Bronx at Yankee Stadium, Boston College on a Thursday night, and the regular season finale at Duke. I think we probably all have our own expectations of what that 4-game stretch might bring. I would not be surprised to see... Look, I mean, I think any outcome is on the table. And there's probably just as good a chance of going 0-for in those last 4 games as there is in going 4-0 in those last 4 games. I'd say Pitt is just as likely to finish 2-10 as they are to finish 6-6, by which I mean, I don't think it's very likely that either one of those outcomes will come to pass. My guess is that it's probably most likely that they will win 3 or 4 games total on the season, which means winning 1 or 2 over the course of the month of November. This week against Florida State doesn't look like a very good option, of course. The number 4 team in the country, one of the best teams in the country since the start of the season, and a legitimate national championship contender. Syracuse looks far more winnable after the Orange have sort of done. The Orange have sort of done what Syracuse tends to do and stacked up wins, but then they've fallen into a slump of late. Boston College is sort of the opposite. They started off in a slump, but they've stacked up some wins now, won a few in a row, and are building their way toward bowl eligibility. They're pretty close there. And then Duke, I think, is still a very dangerous team, a very legitimate team, particularly with Riley Leonard back if he's healthy by that point. And it's sort of unfortunate for Pitt is that, if you consider Riley Leonard, their quarterback, to be more and more likely with each passing week, Pitt is at the furthest point on that spectrum, the very end of that spectrum in the regular season. So if he's going to be back for any game this year, and whatever, the closest he'll be to 100%, it's going to be in that game against Pitt, and that's unfortunate for the Panthers. I think they can get 2 wins out of that stretch. And that's not to sit here and bemoan the fact that that means they'll finish 4-8 with one of the, the worst records since the Johnny Majors 2 era. Even though that's very much what it's heading toward. And I think we all understand that, and I think we've all accepted that. And that doesn't mean the team shouldn't keep playing hard and shouldn't keep trying and all that. But I do think that there is time for being realistic and taking a hard look at things in terms of what you can accomplish in these final 4 games. And the Pitt coaches are never going to come out and say, look, we're cashing out on this season. We're just going to turn it over to young players. And if we lose all 4, who cares? 2-10, 4-8, not a big difference there. I would say that winning a couple games late would be better than not winning any games at all. And so, I think the coaches would probably say that as well. But I do think there are some things they need to focus on and can focus on over the course of these 4 games as they move toward an all-important, maybe one of the most important off seasons we've seen here in a long time. For starters, I think you have to nudge yourself as much as you can closer and closer to the youth on the team. And they've been doing that. Kenny Johnson has started the last 3 games. Sam Ogunlola continues to get more and more snaps. We've seen, even at Notre Dame in very interesting situations, crucial situations, they'll go out there with Brandon George at middle linebacker, and he's a senior, but flanked by 2 true freshmen in Braylon Lovelace and Jordan Bass. We've seen Lovelace play in every game this season that he's been healthy. Kyle Lewis has played a lot as a redshirt freshman. Bass got into the lineup. Rasheem Biles was playing out there as a true freshman. You now have all 3 true freshman linebackers having used their red shirts. They're not going to redshirt this year, and I think we believed there was a chance that 1 or 2 of them would burn their red shirts. I don't know if we expected all 3 to do it, but here we are. All 3 have, and so they need to keep playing. Now, linebacker's a little bit of a unique situation because it's not like they really have anyone else. Even at the start of the season, Lovelace and Lewis were playing a lot because that was the extent of the depth that they had at outside linebacker, and that continues to be the case. And so that's not really one where you're going to start dialing back the snaps for the veterans to get more youth on the field. That's one where the youth is going to keep playing because they have to, because they don't have anybody else. But I do think there are some other spots where we probably need to see a little bit more of the youth. And I don't think you need to bench Devin Danielson, Tyler Bentley, David Green. Those guys are 6-year seniors. They've been around for a lot with this program. They've been here for both. They were here for both Coastal Division championships. They were here for the ACC championship. They were contributors on that team. They were contributors on the 9-win team a year later. They've been through a lot with this program, and you're not going to set those guys on the bench permanently, but you do need to get more guys out there. I think you need to, as much as his health allows it, you need to increase the reps for Sean Fitzsimmons. Isaiah Neal needs to play. I think he played in the Wofford game, but I don't think he has played since, so he's still got 3 games to use, and I think it would be a failure to come out of this season not having had him on the field for those 4 games. I don't know if you're necessarily going to burn the red shirt and play him in all 4 games right now, or all 4 remaining games, to end up with him, in five games. I'm just checking the stats real quick. Isaiah Neal did. He played in the Wofford game. So I don't think you're going to play him in all 4 of these November games and burn his red shirt, but I do think you should get him out there, for 3 of those 4 and play up to the max and get him game reps and get him game experience, partially just to see how he does and partially to get him ready for next year when he's going to have to play a larger role because all 3 of those guys, Danielson, Bentley, and Green, will be gone. Defensive end, like I mentioned, Sam Okunlola has continued to get more reps. I think Jimmy Scott should probably get more reps as a redshirt freshman. And I tell you, Nakai Johnson probably needs to go on the clock here in the month of November. And that's not a do-or-die situation, but I think you need to give him, and he's gotten opportunities. He's played, I think, in every game this season. He's gotten snaps, limited as they may be in some instances. But give Nakai Johnson some extended series and see what he can do for you. Not necessarily at the expense of your team. And if you feel like he's really costing your team, then yeah, you have to make a change and get him out of there and get somebody else back on the field. But that'll tell you something about Nakai Johnson and where he is. I think this should be something of a proving ground for Nikai Johnson and showing what he can do. I think similarly at cornerback, you need to start finding out some information on Rylan Gandy, on Noah Bigelow, on Tamarian Crumpley, on Rashad Battle if he's healthy and available to play. I thought he was going to be out there. Pat Narduzzi is, he was hurt in training camp, but Pat Narduzzi has never said that Battle is out for the season. And so, I think the possibility still exists. It wasn't a good sign when they put Tamarian Crumpley in the same jersey number as him. It sort of didn't speak well of Battle's chances of playing, but maybe they have to make an adjustment to that if he's available. Either way, I'm not saying you bench MJ Devonshire, AJ Woods, and Marquez Williams, but you need to start cutting into those reps, okay? Because, and I think those guys have been some of the more solid players on defense, and I'm not taking anything away from them, but the reality is you've gone 2-6 playing with 3 guys who are not going to be back next year. You can go 2-2, 1-3, 0-4, playing with guys who will be here next year, finding out if they can play. And again, you're not going to cut Williams, Woods, and Devonshire down to 0 reps, but you can cut 25% of their reps and get some of those younger players some playing time. Safety, it's already happening. They're getting those young guys out there. Offensive line, it's already happening. You're getting Ryan Baer out there. You got Branson Taylor, who is a returning player, but he's going to be around for a little bit longer. BJ Williams is playing. Terrence Moore is playing. Terrence Enos played the other day. So you're seeing it there. I think at running back is an interesting situation. You know what I think about Rodney Hammond. You know what I think about Rodney Hammond's usage. And you know what I think they should be doing and giving Rodney Hammond more snaps. I looked over the course of the season, 8 games. There have only been 2 games where Rodney Hammond got more carries than Sebo Flemister. It was the West Virginia and Carolina games. He got 14 carries against West Virginia. Flemister got 6. He got 14 carries against Carolina, and Flemister got 1. Since then, in every other game, Flemister has matched or exceeded Hammond's carries. And really, the only game where he matched was the Cincinnati game where Flemister, Hammond, and Daniel Carter all got 6 carries each, which makes no sense, but that's okay. Every other game, though, you're seeing a disparity in carries. Virginia Tech, Flemister 10, Hammond 7. Louisville, Flemister 13, Hammond 11. Wake Forest, Flemister 23 carries, Rodney Hammond 3. Notre Dame, Flemister 8 carries, Rodney Hammond 6. I still believe, even though there's a bit of a similarity in the yards per carry production from those 2 players, I still believe Rodney Hammond's the better back. And it doesn't make any sense to me why he is playing as your RB2. That I don't get that. And snap counts are the same way. There have been 3 games, according to Pro Football Focus, there have been 3 games this season where Rodney Hammond has gotten more offensive snaps than Sebo Flemister. It was the Cincinnati, West Virginia, and North Carolina games. And that's it. Every other game, Flemister has outsnapped Rodney Hammond. In the last 2 games, again, according to Pro Football Focus, Sebo Flemister has taken 95 offensive snaps and Rodney Hammond has taken 34. You're talking about more than double the snaps. And I don't get it. I don't get it. I think Rodney Hammond is the best back. And you can debate about whether he's good enough or explosive enough to be an RB1, if he's this or if he's that. I still think he's the best back they've got on this team. He needs to get the ball. And you know what else? Let's see Montrevious Lloyd. Let's see TJ Harbison. Let's see Derek Davis. If you've listened to these podcasts, if you've read me on Panther-Lair.com, if you've heard things I've ever said in the past, I always say, look, I'm not one of those people who looks at a team and says, well, let's just see what that guy can do, because coaches don't think like that, and I understand why they don't. They're not going to go in the face of the evidence from practice and film and all that and play the guy that they don't know if they can rely on. But I think you can probably try to find a role for Montrevious Lloyd or TJ Harbison or Derek Davis and get them out there for some snaps and put the ball in their hands and see if something happens. What you're doing right now isn't working. You scored 1 touchdown at Notre Dame and 2 touchdowns at Wake Forest. So it's clear, it's not like you've got a good thing going. You don't want to break up the rhythm and the momentum. And I understand you want to keep trying to make it work with these guys, but at a certain point, you have to be honest about the situation. And the situation is you're 2-6 with 4 games left to play. You've got a handful of guys who aren't going to be back next year. I mean, that's not even like a transfer thing. We'll talk about that in a second. But Sebo Flemister is out of eligibility after this year, and that doesn't mean you turn your back on him. You don't kick him to the curb. You don't throw him away. It's relationships. It's people business. I mean, these are people we're talking about, and you're not going to, throw away 2 years of service to the program like that and say, who cares, man? You're not back next year anyway. We're not playing you anymore. But you do need to find ways to get, I think you need to find some ways to get some of those younger guys on the field, and you do need to get Rodney Hammond involved. Because here's the other thing. I mean, like I didn't talk about wide receiver, but I mean, the reality is wide receiver, they're playing all the guys they have anyway. I think all those guys on the team have eligibility remaining. It's all, third, fourth year transfers and true freshmen. So, I mean, they're playing everybody they have already. I don't think there's much to change there. I guess you could get a look at Lamar Seymour or, Izzy Polk or Zion Fowler-El, but, you're pretty much getting those guys. You're already seeing a lot of, you're seeing Kenny Johnson a lot. But the other thing, too, that you need to think about, and it's not something that I think as coaches you could ever explicitly state. It's not something that I think that they would come out and say publicly, and I don't even think they would say it privately to the players. But there's a certain reality of 2023, and that reality is the transfer portal. It doesn't just giveth, it taketh away. Taketh. It doesn't just give, it takes. And you've got, while there's some prevailing thought that this team is completely bereft of talent, I don't believe that to be the case. And I think there are a number of players on this team, particularly offensive players, but even some defensive guys as well. But I think there are particularly some offensive players who would be attractive to other Power 5 programs. Maybe Alabama's not coming in to try to get Kenny Johnson, but somebody else might. Maybe Georgia's not looking for Gavin Bartholomew to be the next Brock Bowers or something like that, but somebody else might. And I don't think you design your game plan and call your game plan, Operation Keep Rodney Hammond or Operation Keep Gavin Bartholomew or Operation Keep Kenny Johnson, but I think you better have an eye on it. You better get those guys involved. And I mean, the way I just said that, it sounds like some threat. Like I've got inside info that all these guys are looking to leave. But the reality is, when you look at the usage numbers for Gavin Bartholomew and Rodney Hammond, it's not hard to believe that somebody is in their ear saying, dude, you could be used better somewhere else. Why don't you go somewhere where they're going to get you the ball? Hey, Gavin Bartholomew, you lead all Power 5 tight ends in yards per catch, and you can't even get a target in a game where your team doesn't score a touchdown until the final few minutes when all the backups are in. You don't think you could get a better opportunity than that? That's what you want to play in? And people will be in his ear about that. Either friends or family or representatives of other coaches or of other schools and other coaching staffs. It's the reality of 2023. And you don't want to pepper Gavin Bartholomew with 12 targets a game just because you're praying that he's going to stay. I mean, the reality is, this crazy stuff here, all right? Sit down. Hold on to your butts. The reality is you should pepper Gavin Bartholomew with like 8 targets per game because he's one of your best players. And every time you throw him the ball, something good happens. I mean, that's hyperbole, but not by much. Okay, you should be throwing the ball to Gavin Bartholomew a lot because it's a good thing for your team. Your team is better, your offense is better when you throw the ball to Gavin Bartholomew. Crazy stuff, right? So you could actually accomplish 2 things here. You could throw the ball to him and have good things happen on offense, and you could also throw the ball to him and help him understand and realize just how special he is to this team and how loved he is to this team. And it may sound like I'm being a little bit ridiculous. I'm going off on like a sports talk rant or whatever, that kind of thing. But I asked Pat Narduzzi on Monday about Gavin Bartholomew, and you may or may not have seen this quote. You may or may not have read it or heard it or watched the video or whatever it is, because we were all talking about his follow-up on his post-game comments from Saturday. But I asked Pat Narduzzi about Gavin Bartholomew on Monday. I said, what needs to happen to get him the ball more? And our team's just taking him away. Why is he not getting targeted more? And here's what he said. Yeah, Gavin came out of that game with no targets. Was Notre Dame focusing on him? Was that something that just wasn't available to you?
We probably rotated our tight ends maybe more than we should have, but we try to keep those guys fresh. I actually had a conversation with Gavin this morning. I called him. I think he had 27 total snaps, but Usually, our tight ends are getting more snaps than they had. We didn't go much 12 personnel because we didn't like 12 against Notre Dame. Just because of what the box was going to look like and how they would play us if we put everybody in the box. So you didn't get the two tight ends that are getting more snaps. We just kept those guys fresh if they're running routes, and so they were balanced out more. As a head coach, I'd like to see Gavin obviously get more targets and play more plays. I think we got to keep him on the field.
So you said you called him this morning. Is that what you were trying to communicate?
Well, I asked him. I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And no doubt about it, you only had 27. How you doing? I wasn't happy with it when I saw the play count.
So if the head coach wakes up on Monday morning and says, "Oh crap, I got to call the tight end and tell him how important he is, and tell him how much we need to get him the ball more, and tell him how valuable he is to the offense," which, Pat Narduzzi did not use those exact words, but that's what he said, right? You heard it. That was the message he communicated. That was the message he conveyed to Gavin Bartholomew. If he wakes up on Monday morning and says, "I got to call him. I got to pick up my phone and call Gavin Bartholomew to make sure he knows I love him." I don't want to extrapolate too far, but it sure sounds to me like the head coach is concerned. It sure sounds to me like he's worried about Gavin Bartholomew and how Gavin Bartholomew feels about his role with this offense and with this team. And understandably so. He should be concerned about that. He should be making a call to Gavin Bartholomew and probably a handful of other guys to make sure they know how important they are to the team and how valuable and how much they're a building block of what they're going to do in 2024, that the success that Pitt is going to have in 2024, this is what Narduzzi needs to be saying, is that the success they are going to have in 2024 will be built on the play of guys like you, Gavin Bartholomew. And it sort of sounds like that's what he was saying, without being privy to the conversation. But I think Pat Narduzzi was rather revealing in his comments about what he wanted to say to Bartholomew. And I think he needs to have that approach with a bunch of guys. Okay, because I think Bartholomew's going to look good to other teams. I think Kenny Johnson's going to look attractive to other teams. I think defensively, I think a guy like Sam Okunlola is going to look attractive to other teams. Jordan Bass is going to look attractive to other teams. Other teams already knew about Jordan Bass. Jordan Bass was a big-time recruit for Pitt to get in the 2023 recruiting class, who had a lot of offers from other schools. And it was huge for Pitt to land him, and it was huge for Pitt to hold on to him all the way until signing day, because there was a lot of us who didn't think they were going to be able to do that. And so when the time comes, when the offseason arrives, Jordan Bass or people around him are going to hear about other opportunities. You can almost guarantee it. And maybe Braylon Lovelace too. You need to make sure these players know that Pitt is the place they want to be. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. And there's a lot of ways that you can re-recruit them. Coaches have talked for a while now over the last couple of years that so much of the offseason is spent re-recruiting your own roster, trying to keep guys together, retention. And that's what I think a lot of NIL efforts end up going toward, is retention, even more than addition. For either recruiting or transfers, it's keeping guys on the roster. I saw somebody on the message board use the phrase they didn't want to get Addisoned again. And I think that's true. And I think when you're coming off a season that is the way this one looks, and whether it ends up 2-10 or 4-8 or by God 6-6, you're going to have to fend off some suitors. And there are a lot of personal ways you can do that. You can make sure the relationships are strong and all of that, but you can also get them involved. You can get them the ball. You can make sure they're a prominent piece here. Because A, it'll help you get ready for next year. B, hopefully it'll make them happy and make them want to stay and be part of it next year. And C, some of these guys just might be your best players. Some of these guys might be the best options at some of these spots. So maybe it even helps you win a game or two here. We'll see. But it's going to be very interesting. This next month, and really the next month and a half, it'll be very, very interesting. And a crucial period for Pat Narduzzi as he moves forward toward year 10 of his tenure here at Pitt. All right, make sure you like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, so you don't miss any of our videos. These Morning Pitt videos, our live stream, our live post-game shows, those are always a lot of fun. Make sure you do that, and then you won't miss out on any of it. And then check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Get all the Pitt coverage right there. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I appreciate it. Pitt basketball game tonight, so we will talk about that tomorrow on the Morning Pitt right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.